Understanding the Music Fan in 2025, supported by Amazon Music. Two parts to this. We'll have a panel shortly, but to kick off, please welcome to the stage Mr. Darren Hemmings and his special presentation style I think you're going to enjoy. Mr. Hemmings, please.
I need to make a note not to turn up dressed in the same shit that's on the promo thing. I've failed already. So let's dive into this. We've got 76 slides to get through. Strap in, this is going to be fun. So hello, I'm Darren. I run Motive Unknown. It's a music marketing company. We've been around for about 13 years, I think. There's now nearly 30 of us in the company. We have quite a broad selection of clients. We work with labels, we work with artists. We get around, basically. You can see here there's a large brag sheet of stuff we've worked on in recent years, most of whom are still clients. So there you go, that's who I am and what I do, which I suppose is a qualifier for why I'm here talking about understanding the music fan. So I wanted to start with a kind of summary of where we are. Now, the good joke on this is that one of the details I'm about to reference is already, I think, out of date. But let's jump in. So, I take issue with Music Ally's deadlines. If you send something last Thursday, this is what happens. But TikTok is dead in the USA. It's not still alive. I think it's worth noting that for all that Trump is saying, we've not actually got it resuscitated. Apple and Google are not making the app available in the store, but it doesn't bode well for now, let's just say. Beyond that, we've had a change from friend feed platforms to kind of more algorithmically based things. So, you know, the old days of social media where you had you and your friends and you were broadcasting only to them is kind of largely over in favor of the style that TikTok gave, which was a kind of we know you better than you know yourself run of feeds. So algorithmically driven entertainment is also becoming the norm. Space Karen has bought Twitter, and it's now full of bigoted, truth-hating weirdos. Meta's going the same way because they've just removed all the moderation, so you can expect that to be overrun with truth-hating weirdos imminently. Big tech itself is under increasing scrutiny. Just, I think, globally, everyone's looking at big tech and wondering whether their interests are aligned. And then we've got AI slop is kind of overrunning Facebook and everything else, probably due to the truth-hating weirdos. So where we are at the moment is, you know, pretty bleak, I think one might argue. So superficially, it's still easy to broadcast to these large audiences. You can still do that, but it's harder than ever to make a meaningful connection with those fans thanks to the control of algorithms and everything else. And it's even harder still to maintain a relationship with these people. You can go viral on TikTok, but you're old news by the following Thursday or whatever. We do have a new bon mot, though, that's in circulation in 2025. I'm sure you'll have seen this around. Superfans. Fall back, everyone. We've fixed it. So superfans are still, you know, this word is being kicked around by lots of people. The majors particularly are sort of rolling in on this to own this space. And as you'd have seen, they're making lots of announcements that kind of, my clicker catches up. There we go. So we've got Warner's are doing its own superfan app. You know, Universal is also planning something. But, you know, on the whole, these things are feeling quite sort of superficial to me. They're, you know, do we want the superfan relationship to be owned by record labels? Personally, I'd say no. But this superfans thing is something we need to talk about, mainly because I've been doing marketing for 20-odd years, and it just gets on my tits that people are throwing this around like it's a new word. Superfans are just big fans. There's always been big fans. Remember Elvis and all the screaming women, I guess? You know, big fans, superfans. They'd have bought anything. Should you be focusing on superfans? Yep. But then you always should have been. They were always there, they've always been there, and this is something we need to look at. But there's 2 points I want to make about superfans in general. Don't fall for terms like superfans is probably the first one. I really hate when somebody invents a term and then just boots it around like it's a solution to something. It isn't. These things have been there, and they'll always be there. They're not a new development whatsoever. And then, the majors might be all about superfans. You're going to see this word getting kicked around as much as Universal are kicking around the word independent at the moment, like it's meaningful. But you don't have to be sucked into this kind of thing of superfans. Don't follow the lead with this. Our job as marketers is to drive meaningful connection. And, really that's the word on this to be focusing on is meaningful. Oh, have I been censored? Amazing. So that is not what I call meaningful. 34 versions of an album, for example, is not the way I think that these things should be done. Your fans are not a cash cow to be milked. Your job is to build relationships with these people and not have something dictated to you by big tech or other kind of forces that would say, right, we have to follow this lead and do things the way these things should be done. So too often we're falling for these latest kind of tech trends and we're turning into ambulance chasers as well. I think we need to just calm this down a little bit. We're reaching a period where I think it's never been clearer to me that the interests of big tech and those of arts and culture and the industries around arts and culture have been, never been more sort of diametrically opposed. I think they're really pulling in completely different directions. So here's the thing. The underlying principles of marketing haven't changed in 100 years, as far as I'm concerned. Every marketing book I've read is just a rewrite of the same book. So if you want to learn everything about marketing, just go and read that. I mean, that's the 80th anniversary edition, and I think that image is 20 years old. I think the book is 1927 it was published. But genuinely, almost every book on marketing is pretty much a rewrite of that book. So where does this leave us? Music fandom, in my view, hasn't changed. Not ever. I mean, I've put 1958 here, which is a sort of crude shot at whenever Elvis was big, or started to get big. But to be honest, there's probably someone standing for Mozart back in the day. So music fandom hasn't changed at all. The medium changes. It used to be, you'd be reading about it in the newspaper, you'd be listening on the wireless or whatever, the gramophone. And, now we're doing it all through TikTok and YouTube and all these other things. But the nature of fandom remains exactly the same. And understanding fandom is not about the latest tech platforms. It's about really understanding about two things, which is emotion and connection, because that's all that music is at the end of the day. If you're a fan of it, it's connecting with you and you're connecting with it, and that's a deep process. So you might well be watching this thinking, okay, he's prattling on, but give us something useful to go with here in terms of practical advice. So I kind of have got two angles on this, which is the what and the where. So let's start by looking at the what. Focus on creative. Now, this is one of the most obvious statements you'll read, and I think it's so obvious everyone will go, yeah, all right. But as a man running a company dealing with hundreds of record labels, the amount of shitty creative I see is ridiculous, and we need to talk about this. It can get better, and it should get better, and there are some really smart agencies out there that will help you get better. Blackstar, who are on the panel shortly, are one of them. So creative is something that we can all develop better and create better impact with. Focus on nurturing connection. Your job is to connect with fans. As an artist, you want to connect with fans, and I think we forget the sort of viral nature of fandom. If I discover an incredible, like last night I discovered a track called Nan Slapper by Boo, and it's a really heavy drum and bass thing with the most ignorant bass line I've ever heard in my entire life. It sounds like your cabinet when the bass speaker is rattling the cabinet, but without the bass. It just sounds like a rattle. And on about slapping your nan in the face with bass and sending her out into space. But I've now posted this to as many people as I know and probably helped it along a little bit because I'm telling people, and all my friends I've told have come back and gone, this is the weirdest shit I've heard in years. I'm going to tell everyone else I know. That's how fandom works. That's how you spread these things. It's through connection. I think we need to focus on serving channels that actually work. Again, I think there's this kind of view that we have to service like 42 channels at once. I worked with Run the Jewels. At one point, we counted that they had 16 different channels. So when we had an announcement to make, there were 16 channels to push this through until I put my hand up and was like, can we just not be doing this? Because it's insane, and we're forgetting stuff, and it doesn't work. So focus on channels that actually work for you. So the next part I want to talk about is the where. Socials are great, but they're transient. ask any TikToker in the last 48 hours. You know, their whole thing may have gone up in smoke. It may not. We'll find out. But, you know, these things can come and go, and you're also subject to the whims of an algorithm. You know, again, I've been doing this long enough that, you know, when Facebook was the thing and everyone had a Facebook page, everyone shat the bed when suddenly they wanted more video and less photos. So there's a blind panic to service these things. And your audience reach can sort of really peak and trough as a consequence. So ideally, upstream fans into own channels wherever possible for one simple reason, that they're not down to be controlled algorithmically. And own channels can be email, but there can be, you know, any sort of messaging group. I mean, even Discord servers, I guess, count for that sort of thing. Just somewhere where your message is not being shot through a filter that someone else controls in order to reach the fans. So it's better for the artist and better for the fan. Better for the artist because it means you reach more people. Better for the fan because you don't get that thing where you go, oh shit, I didn't know they had a new album out because I missed all the messages. Also, look beyond online. You know, in real life is your friend. I think, you know, my company is perceived as being a digital agency, but I think we're being increasingly contrarian and looking at what you can do in real life to connect with people. I think Fred, again, is probably a great example of somebody who parlays a really great internet activity into real life things, which was, you know, Madison Square Garden with Skrillex and Fortet, and those things that feel a bit once in a lifetime to those attending. I've got some other random points to note. Think long term. I think too many conversations I see are talking about the next single and what we're going to do with that. I think everyone needs to be looking at where you're going to go with your artist over a much longer period of time. You should be planning in years, not weeks. Be data informed and not data led. I owe my friend Matthew Horn a huge drink for this because I repeat it every time someone asks me to speak about this stuff. You've got to, you know, data is good. It's not everything. Go and stand in a gig. I mean, I once sent one of my staff to the front row of a big special gig in Brighton and just told them to stand there and turn around and figure out who was there, because it's important to take a reality check on who the people are that are actually supporting the artist. Stop chasing trends. You know, I keep seeing this thing where people are chasing TikTok trends and going, yeah, it worked, we got loads of views. Well, you got loads of views because you've jumped on the trend. People are consuming the trend, not the music. You might be getting somewhere with it, but you know, it's the sort of ambulance chasing mentality that I don't think really works. Another point, this isn't about cost. You can do all these things without spending loads of money. You don't have to chuck a ton of cash at stuff. That's ridiculous. Good ideas don't cost anything. If you're smart, you can do these things really well. You know, one of our bands we're working with at the minute, a bunch of upstarts from Dublin called Gurriers, did an album launch in a pub, and they just rented out the top floor of the pub and invited 100 of their biggest fans down to wreck the pub. And everyone loved it. So, you know, not an expensive exercise. At the behest of one of my directors, he asked that I reference the fan dartboard. We put this thing in a presentation 7 years ago, and it still holds up. So this is the fan dartboard. It's good, isn't it? You have wider targets on the outside, reach people, connections, fans, and super fans. But our job is to essentially get as many people from the outside of that dartboard into the center. That's the job of a marketing person when you're dealing with artists and fans. So going back to this, you really, you know, wider targets are essentially people who probably don't care about your artist, haven't heard of them, aren't that fussed. But these are the people that you're trying to drive more into the center by connecting with them and engaging them. Another point, don't be paranoid. You're almost certainly very good at your job, so don't worry. You know, your thoughts you're having about marketing probably are right. It's just at the moment you're battling a lot of disinformation that is telling you you should be, you know, chasing TikTok and going after data stats for clout and all this kind of stuff. And I don't really buy into that anymore. I think we all need to take a bit more confidence in who we are and what we do, and go back to a slightly more tried and true version of marketing, which is kind of, you know, the systems that we've always known to work very well. So have faith in yourself and have faith in what works, because too often I think everybody is just starting to question themselves. You've got to understand, again, this is about emotion and connection, and those are the things you're beholden to. Not stats, not kind of, ooh, we got viral for 10 minutes on TikTok type antics. That's not the way to go. So always consider what the experience will be to the fan. You know, look at these things and ask yourself, what as a fan will I be seeing with this, and how will that go down with me? You know, it's something I value about a lot of the bands we work with. You know, I'm a fan of the band as well, and therefore, you know, I'm able to speak as a fan as to whether I'd enjoy that experience or not. There's always this thing of the balance between the give and the take. Stop asking fans to do stuff unless you're going to give them something back. You know, so you keep that balance there, but always keep in mind what the experience is. Always ask yourself, why my artist over any other? I think this is something people have to look at, is to sit there and say, well, why should anyone give a shit about this artist over 10 million others? And it's a great starting point to ask yourself what the points of difference might be. But always keep going with these kinds of views and these slides I've chucked out there, which I'm sure we can make available in some capacity afterwards, and you'll never go wrong. I think at the point we're in at the moment, it's worrying for everybody to be, you know, should we be on this platform, that platform, or another one? But the truth is, hold to your principles. We are good at marketing in general. I don't meet shitty marketing people in music. They're normally passionate and very good at what they do. So keep that in mind. And you'll never go far wrong. That's my end. Thanks for listening.